rather than going just from here to here, if there's a person in front of them and they try to run over them, and they do, and they kill that person, the car, do you believe the car can be a deadly weapon at that point?
Since you explained it to me.
Okay. Because that's what part of this case is about, is that Mr. DuBose was stopped for a traffic violation, and things degenerated from there and went downhill until the point where he took off in his car, and we believe the evidence will show that Mr. Tenzing was hung up in that car at that time, and he feared for his life as a result of that. So are you okay with that concept of a car being a deadly weapon? Okay. There's been some discussion about the group Black Lives Matter. You've heard that in the courtroom here? Okay, and the reason I ask is that you didn't answer any of those questions, but it looks like maybe you skipped that entire page. That's not a problem. A lot of people did, but a lot of questions there, right? Okay. The other issue, the other questions on that page, part of them were with reference to Sam DuBose and his family. You don't know any of the DuBoses? Okay. Is there any reason you can think of that would cause you to not be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this panel? Okay, you indicated your son is a detective with the Cincinnati Police Department? Okay, and there are Cincinnati police officers who are... Oh, Hamilton County. Okay. Sheriff? Okay. And you indicated that you won't allow anybody else to influence your opinion. You're going to do what you think is right. Is that correct? And you'll be fair and impartial to everybody in this case?
Yes.
Thank you. Juror number 7? Okay. Juror number 7, when I went through these questionnaires, I made notes about everybody's responses. With most of them, I filled up a front and back of a page, okay? On yours, I got that far, because there's not a lot of information in there. It looks like you have not watched, seen, or paid much attention to this case either when it happened or at the first trial. Is that a fair statement?
Fair statement. I did see some stuff on social media initially, but I wasn't interested in following it.
And is it a fair statement on my part that you have not formed an opinion in reference to the guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing?
I have not.
In question number 177, you indicated that you were, let me look at this exactly. You indicated some concerns about the time commitment to this trial?
Yes, in terms of my work schedule right now, our company is converting to a new system, and I'm part of that process. Based on a 9:30 to 1:30 or 9 o'clock to 1:30 schedule, I can most likely work around that. It will create a number of other people to take on responsibility for what I do.
Okay, but that won't distract you so much that you can't be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this panel?
I don't believe so. I think Juror 81 had described a case where you would need to feel like you had to complete this full day. I would say that I need to complete a portion of my day, maybe less than 50%.
And you're willing to do that?
I am willing to do that.
Thank you. Juror number 10. I also have a short page on you. You indicated in response to question number 60, which asked about whether or not you thought the shooting was justified or not. You said it did not seem justified, though I realize that there is more involved in making the decision than what we saw. Does that sound like what you said? Would you agree with me that the body-worn camera video is but one piece of evidence and that there's a whole lot? I think one of the potential jurors said there are 3 sides to every story. In my experience, I've found that there's sometimes more than 3 sides to a story. You're willing to listen, if we ask you to sit on this panel, to the entire trial before you make up your mind. Is that a fair statement? Okay. I think you indicated in response to one question that you had expressed your opinion about guilt or innocence before, or heard people expressing opinions. Is that correct? Okay. Regardless, you will, well, and in fact, in one question, I think you said you formed an opinion as to guilt or innocence.
I think that I put, after watching the body camera, that it wasn't justified, but I have not formed an opinion.
Okay, well, in question 64, there were a series of questions about the first trial. And it said, did you discuss the trial with anyone while it was occurring or afterwards? You checked yes. Based on what you saw, heard, or learned of the first trial, did you form an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing? You said yes. And then under the next question, you said if you did form an opinion, could you set that aside and base the decision solely on this case here? And you said yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if you had an opinion, I know it's difficult, but you can put it out of your mind. Thank you. Is there any reason that you don't think you could be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit? Okay. Juror number 35. You indicated in response to the question, well, first of all, there were a series of questions before you were asked whether or not you thought the shooting was justified. Had you watched the press conference video? You indicated you had, and you had formed an opinion in reference to whether Ray Tenzing was guilty or not guilty, correct?
Yes, I don't recall if I actually saw the press conference or saw, information about it. I don't recall watching the entire press conference, though.
Okay. You said you'd watched the video and you had an opinion about guilt or innocence, correct?
Yes, as we sat here and gained more information, I might have a different answer at this point in time.
Well, you might or you will, because if you have an opinion, you're gone.
Well, what I would say is that I'm not able to say if he's guilty because I've not seen all the evidence. So that's what I meant by that.
Okay, and your opinion, I assume, was when you say it was not justified that he was guilty, your original opinion, correct?
I felt that he shouldn't have died at that time.
Okay.
He shouldn't have shot.
And you had some discussion with Mr. Teeger about Black Lives Matter.
I think we discussed that.
Okay, perhaps on your questionnaire you said you think Black Lives Matter and such groups are positive-minded groups seeking justice dealing with racist matters involving the police.
To my knowledge, that's the way I understand it.
And do you think that police are racist?
No. Some individuals are, just as in any other profession in law and crime.
Okay. You wrote in one response that you think police fear African Americans.
And it seemed like two summers ago, there were several shootings involving unarmed black men with police officers. So, in some cases, I think that. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Let me go right to the questionnaire so I don't paraphrase it. Question number 115 says there has been a lot of discussion about the number of unarmed African Americans shot by police officers. Do you feel there are problems in this area, and what do you think are the causes of the problem? And you wrote, yes, there seems to be something fear by police officers. I'm unsure why. Oh, some type of fear, yeah. Your handwriting's a little difficult there. Is that your belief?
I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't understand how someone who doesn't have a gun or a moving vehicle or any other type of weapon would be shot and killed in a justifiable way, is what I mean.
Okay. You just used a phrase I thought was interesting. You said a moving vehicle. What do you mean by that?
I mean, a moving vehicle, we've already said, could be used as a weapon. That could be used as a way to injure someone.
Okay. And is it your assumption when you said that the vehicle Sam DeBose was driving was not moving at the time the shot was fired?
From what I can recall from the video a couple years ago, it seems as if the vehicle was moving. It was a quick video, I don't remember.
Okay, and will you wait until you hear all the evidence? Thank you. Now, you also indicated that you think police target African Americans, correct?
Just from my recollection from some college classes I've taken from data, I think that over time it seems as if that has been a trend. I have nothing to back that up right now, but it seems over time that's what I have.
Does your feeling that that is the case impact your ability to be fair and impartial to Ray Tenzing, a law enforcement officer?
No, I don't necessarily think that that's what took place here either. I don't know that he was targeted because he was black. That was just a general question.
Okay. Another question you responded to was that you didn't think the justice system was fair, and you thought it systematically black men are targeted by the justice system.
I do think that.
Okay. Now, there's one other question that I was a little confused about. Question 132 asks, do you have an opinion, whether based on religion or otherwise, about whether or not there are ever any circumstances where one human being is justified in taking the life of another human being? And you wrote yes, and then it said, please explain your answer, and you wrote, a law is a law. Can you explain what you were thinking or what you meant by that?
Probably what I was thinking, or what I would like to say about it, is that there are laws and rules set in place. So the question was, would one be justified in killing? Is that the original question?
Well, I think the question was to the effect of, are there any circumstances where one human being is justified in taking the life of another human being?
Depending on the position of that human being, yes.
Okay.
Meaning law enforcement in certain types of situations, or military, or war.
Or you, for instance, if your life was being threatened, would you feel the right to try to take the life of the person who was threatening your life?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with an organization called change.org?
Not specifically, no.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Yes.
And do you have a posting on there with a video, with a clip of a still frame from a video about this case
Not that I know of.
that has a caption under it, John Kasich, tell Ohio Governor Kasich to ensure Samuel DuBose's death is not in vain. Sign the petition.
That might be from a couple years ago, I don't recall. If it's what?
I'm sorry?
I don't know, I don't recall that.
Okay. Have you expressed feelings about this case when it happened a couple years ago?
It's discussed at work.
At Cincinnati Public Schools, right?
Yes.
You teach at you're a teacher, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Do you have opinions right now as we talk this afternoon about whether or not Ray Tenzing is guilty of murder or voluntary manslaughter?
I don't have an opinion because all I've seen is a video with a few seconds worth of information. I don't know his viewpoint, like you said, the camera only sees one angle. I don't know his side of the story. My feeling was more so with the family, just the fact that a man was shot and killed and he has a family that's left here. So that was more so. My discussions at work were more about the aftermath of the trial in the city, in the summer. It was a very emotional time. So most of my conversations were about that.
Okay, I'm not trying to pick on you, but some of your answers, I want people to be fair and impartial, and some of your answers concern me a little bit. Okay, can you assure me, and can you assure Ray Tenzing, and can you assure the state of Ohio that you will be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this jury, and you'll not make up your mind or do anything until the case is submitted to you to deliberate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Counsel, can you approach, please?
Judge, I think that would be good.
Oh. Colleen, I figured you didn't catch up with me.
Oh, yes, go ahead, you go ahead.
Tell me when.
No, you go ahead right now.
Okay. Juror number 35, the court has a number of questions for you, or just a few actually, regarding this Facebook posting. Are you telling the court that this was not your Facebook posting, or was it your Facebook posting?
What I'm telling the court is that I don't recall posting that, or if it was something I just shared. I'm not even sure of the date.
August 13th, 2015, and it's your name, although I can't see the photo, I don't know that it's definitively your Facebook. I mean, I couldn't tell because it's not very large. But it's of great concern to this court, and it is a petition regarding the victim in this incident, and it's talking about signing a petition to ensure, well, he read this to you, you know what I'm talking about, and are you certain that this is not your posting?
My Facebook has never been hacked, so if it's something that was shared, I must have shared it. That would have come from me. I don't recall.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Here you go, mister. Juror number 35, you're excused for cause. And this is just for the record over the objection of the prosecution.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Oh, it's your-
What's the number, Dave?
49.
What juror number is she in?
49.
49, thank you.
Good afternoon, juror number 49. I note from your questionnaire that you have had prior jury service in federal court. Is that correct? Do you remember how long ago that was?
About 20 years ago.
How many?
About 20,
Okay. And did you actually sit on a jury?
yeah.
Do you remember whether it was criminal jury or civil jury? Did the jury reach a verdict in that case? That's good. I was going to ask you if you learned anything about the law in that case, especially if it was criminal, would you put out of your mind anything that you learned there and decide this case solely based on the law that Judge Giz will tell you about at the end of the case?
What you said, yes.
Thank you. You indicated on your questionnaire that you think blacks and low-income people are selectively stopped by law enforcement. Is that an accurate portrayal of your answer?
Yes.
And do you feel that way still?
Sometimes, yeah.
Will that affect your ability to be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this jury?
No.
Okay. You indicated that you had watched the video of this incident at some point, correct?
When it first came out.
And you indicated that you had formed an opinion with reference to the guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing as a result of watching that video, correct?
At that time, yes.
And you indicated in question 60 that that was not justified, the shooting was not justified based on what you saw in the video, correct?
Correct.
Do you still hold those opinions?
No.
And what made you change?
Listening to everything here.
Okay, are you willing to accept that that video is but one small piece of evidence in this entire incident?
Yes.
Thank you. You also indicated in question 64, which was a series of questions about the first trial, that you had watched or heard about the first trial and you had discussed it with other people and formed opinions about guilt or innocence. Is that correct? Okay. Make sure I didn't write that down wrong. You said you watched later on the news, and you were asked at one point in one of the questions, did you discuss the first trial with anyone while it was occurring or afterwards?
Okay, I got you.
You said yes.
Tail end of it, I didn't see the part.
Okay.
Tail end of it. I didn't watch the entire trial.
Okay. And you indicated that you had discussed it and that you had formed an opinion with reference to the guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing. And you also indicated that you could set that aside and it wouldn't influence your ability to sit on this jury.
That's correct.
Okay, can you tell me how you can set that aside if you had an opinion already?
I don't hear every day and hearing all the new stuff that I'm hearing now. video was short. The trial, or the first trial, I really didn't get involved in it. So I'm learning more about the judicial system and what I really need to do as a juror. And
Okay.
take all the information in and base my opinion on that.
Have you learned anything so far that makes you want to get up out of here and not come back?
Those seats.
Now you've got a cushion, right? And seriously, though, based on anything that's happened so far, are you willing to put up with this a little bit longer if we ask you to sit? Thank you. There was one question on there about the settlement that the University of Cincinnati reached with the DuBose family. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
And you said you don't think that the settlement of the wrongful death should have been reported in the news media, that that it was too much of a family mess for her. Remember writing that?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
I just didn't like the publicity at all. They were going to settle. I think they should have just done it quietly. And all of the stuff with the family as far as who gets what, and that was just a little disturbing.
Okay. But you understand that the family really didn't have any control over that,
I
though.
know, the way it was presented was just, it was ugly to me.
Okay. That wouldn't affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case, correct? You understand that's totally separate from this case? Thank you. Now, on question 132, which inquired about your thoughts, whether religious, political, or otherwise, about one human being taking another human being's life, and you wrote, "We are not to kill one or another." What do you mean by that?
I don't think, other than war and stuff like that, I don't think we should be killing each other. I personally could never kill anybody.
Okay. That's a fair statement, but you said other than war or something else. I mean, are there any circumstances that you think a human being other than war is justified in taking another life? Okay, and the reason I ask you that is because this case involves Ray Tenzing taking the life of Sam DuBose. Do you have such a strong feeling that you're going to find Ray Tenzing guilty because he took Sam DuBose's life? You're willing to listen to why that may have happened?
Yes.
And make a decision of whether or not it was justified after you've heard all the evidence?
Yes.
And the law from Judge Giz? And one other question on here, number 171, you were asked, and let me just get to that exactly, because I think that's something that is sort of a trick question. It's not a trick question, but to me it's an interesting question. It says, is there any reason why, if you, and you is underlined, were the defendant, you would not want someone in your state of mind on the jury? And you answered yes to that question. Is there any reason why, if you were the defendant, seated at that table over there, in this case, you would not want someone such as yourself on this jury?
What did I write?
You wrote yes.
No.
Like, I mean, is there some reason?
I was confused on that question.
Okay.
I'm a sound man.
I wasn't questioning that, because there are plenty of people who are of sound mind and memory and body who wouldn't want to be on this jury if they were the defendant. So you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, juror number 14. Okay. You indicated in response to question number 60, which is the question about whether the shooting was justified or not, you said you had watched the video, but you don't have an opinion because you don't know all the facts. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay, that is a perfect answer. You recognize that the video is but one small piece of evidence. I mean, it's probably the main piece of evidence, but it's not the entire story. You're willing to listen to the facts in the trial and hear the entire story, correct? Thank you. You indicated that you did not watch the first trial and have not formed or expressed any opinions about guilty or not guilty. And since we've been sitting here, do you feel the same way?
Yes.
In question number 113, it was a question about University of Cincinnati having a police department, and you indicated that you feel that UC officers are needed to protect students when on campus. Remember that? Okay, if I told you that this incident occurred off of UC's campus, would that change your opinion about UC police officers? Okay, you understand that at the time this incident occurred, there was an agreement between the University of Cincinnati and the City of Cincinnati that their officers would patrol off campus,
Yes.
and they had complete police powers? And the fact that Ray Tenzing was off campus when this happened would not affect your thinking about whether or not he's guilty or not guilty, correct? Thank you. I think, was it you that told us about your experience at the hotel in Florida?
Yes.
And I think you assured us that that experience will not impact your ability to be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this case? Thank you. Juror number 18. You two were rather short on my paper here. You indicated you had no knowledge of this case and had not heard anything about it until you came down here.
I think it probably had just moved back from Washington State not long before that, and based on the date that you said it happened. And I really didn't watch local news. I don't care about the little kids' sports teams and that sort of thing. So I watch a lot of national news, so it's not like I'm pretty smart about all that stuff. So, and Black Lives Matter and all that.
Okay, and you're willing to, I mean, you're probably come in here with as blank a mind as anybody as far as this case is concerned. Is that correct?
Yes, and I feel strongly that I have a civic responsibility to be here, and I know I can have an open mind. I really do.
Thank you. Juror number 19. Are you still with us here?
Still here.
Okay. You expressed, again, some concern about being away from your business in Findlay Market. Is that right?
Actually, the phone right now is my wife's by herself at the store. Our manager's off today, and one other employee called in sick.
Is that a problem that is?
Our policy is that we should never be, for any period of time, more than just one person at the store. So it's a concern.
And why is that your policy?
Because if something happens, who's going to help them? We have a store. People come in, people leave, and things can happen.
I mean, are you in the actual market, or are you on one on the side?
We own 1824 Elm Street.
And is that north or south of the market?
It's actually it's on market property. Are you familiar with the children's playground at Findlay Market?
Yes.
Where that green building right just north of it.
Okay.
The condos on top, and we have a store on the bottom.
You live on top?
No, actually, we live on Pleasant Street, so I have a terrible commute to work, 3.5 blocks.
Yes. And no trolley to get you there.
Well, actually, we call it a streetcar in Cincinnati.
Well, I know
Yes,
what you call
it makes more sense to walk. But I do take the trolley or streetcar here in the morning.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, you take it, where do you catch it? On
When I did take it this week, I basically grabbed it over at the Liberty Street and base, and then I get off at the library and I go home. I just pick up my grab the court sign and then I'll get out of Washington.
Okay, you don't go all the way around the horn.
The first time I saw him, but beyond that, it's strictly a tool.
Okay. You indicated that your father was a circuit judge and your brother was a federal bankruptcy judge on your questionnaire. Are they still active?
My dad's dead, so I don't think he is. And my brother retired.
And was there anything about your relationship with them or their being involved in the law that causes you to feel one way or another about your ability to be fair and impartial?
I think that probably is the one thing that drives the fact that I've repeated that I can be professional, and even though I have a very strong opinion, I can put that aside and focus strictly on the facts.
Well, and that's what I was going to get to. I'm concerned about your very strong opinion because I think I know which way it goes. How will you be able to put that aside?
I'm a professional.
And being a professional, you'll follow the instructions to not form any opinions before the case is finally submitted to you?
Right at this point, I'm probably unlike my neighbor here. I know much more about the case. I read the Enquirer cover to cover every single day, and listen to local NPR. So I know what was going on in the case. I followed the case, but originally not that I followed it during the case. I mean, during the trial itself, and you've seen the video several times. Having said that, I will, when all of a sudden the gavel drops, we start, we will focus on the facts of the case.
Okay, one of the things you said that concerns me is that you've read everything in the Enquirer, and I can assure you that the Enquirer has been full of misinformation and just flat out wrong stuff about this case.
Maybe not.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I think right now, quite frankly, while I don't disagree with the editorial, I find the Enquirer relatively fair as far as their authority. I mean, I agree with all the statements in their editorial stance, but I do feel the facts are
Okay, but do you have any way to check the facts that they report?
from personal experience.
Okay, and your neighbor is the editor of the Enquirer, correct?
He is the editor, yes.
Okay, so you can't really go on record and say anything negative about your neighbor's newspaper. Would that be a fair statement?
I've said plenty of negative things about the Enquirer in our trial debates.
Okay. You indicated in question 77, which asked about whether or not you had any opinions about Sam DuBose, and you indicated Sam DuBose did many things wrong, but did not deserve to die.
That's correct.
Okay. Sam DuBose did die. He died at the hands of Ray Tenzing.
Yes, he did.
You're telling me that you can set that aside and be fair and impartial in this case after having made that kind of statement?
I'm telling you right now that if I'm chosen, I'm a professional to listen to the facts. He does put a color on the lens that I look at, no matter what it is. As I coined the phrase, once you've seen something, you can't unsee it.
I was going to get to that. It's kind of like you can't unring the bell, correct?
Unring the bell, that's when my neighbors behind me got yesterday. You quoted from me, didn't give me the credit for it.
I know what you mean by that. In one question, you indicated you don't know if exposure to discussions about guilt or innocence would affect your ability to be fair and impartial. Like there's some uncertainty there. I mean, and I'm not trying to pick on you, but you keep saying you'll be professional.
I will keep going back to you. I'll be professional at the time it comes down. But at this point in time, it's difficult. I have an opinion. I have a strong opinion. And I've said that repeatedly to prosecution, to the defense will state. But when it comes down, I have to be professional and listen to the facts. But I have a strong opinion. I've also said that my lens has been colored. And so as I look at things, it will always be from that colored lens.
Well, let's drop back here for a minute to your business. The fact that your wife is there by herself, is that going to cause you to, does that make you want to get off of this jury? I mean, because
my business concerns me right now, money coming down from this concerns me if all of a sudden our retirement savings is a rather mixed business. If all of a sudden, many things can happen. I'd rather have positive publicity about my business than have any negative publicity about my business.
Well, and you also indicated that you were worried about that a riot could or would destroy your retirement if there was a riot that resulted from this trial.
That was a big fear last time, and that could be a fear this time too. There was a number of businesses in the Finley market in 2001 riots that didn't reopen.
You indicated that the settlement of the civil suit by UC causes you to form an opinion because your wife is a retired UC professor?
The opinion comes down to the fact that I just have been involved in corporate life for many years now. I've been involved with settlements on the side, and I know that we do our own due diligence and our own investigations to come up with our opinion, which has nothing to do with the criminal side, but we do come up with where we see the risk is at. I know you see what the risk involved. They came up with their own opinion, and I think that they came up with their opinion and so.
And does that opinion affect your ability to sit here and be fair and impartial? I'm going to keep hammering you on
You
this.
keep saying the same thing. If the gavel goes down, I will be professional.
Okay. Question 171. You indicated you didn't know for sure whether you'd want somebody such as yourself on this jury if you were seated over there in that defendant's chair.
I'm not sure that myself, but another person other than me would be professional when the gavel went down.
You indicated in question 176 that you had an opinion prior to coming here today, and nothing has impacted that. And that was on May 25th when you filled out this questionnaire.
Yeah. Well, actually, without going into other things, again, prior to coming in, reading the paper, reading a discussion prior to the 25th between counsel and representatives, not going into the details of that. I know there was a discussion over evidence the day after the 25th, and the headlines said that evidence is not going to be. Again, seeing that, didn't read anymore. I just was on the headlines, but I do know that there's that colors my opinion. But again, I'd be professional. If chosen, I'll be professional.
And Judge, at this time, I'm going to ask that juror number 19 be excused for cause.
Mr. Teeter.
Judge, he said to be fair, we would object to him being excused for cause.
Okay, juror number 19, you're excused for cause at this time. Thank you very much for your service.
Juror number 50, you indicated in your questionnaire that you have seen the press conference, you saw the video, you did not, or the body camera video?
I didn't see no press conference, but I seen the body.
Okay, and you indicated you did not form an opinion after seeing that as far as guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing? You indicated that you thought it was justified.
I believe, there were mistakes made.
And I think
On both parts.
I think you told Mr. Teeger that on both sides. You indicated on your questionnaire, I believe, that you have had a negative experience with police officers in the past. Is that? I'm sorry? Okay, that was, I think we talked about that this morning, correct? Is there anything about that that causes you to think you... Okay.
It's not the police department, it's an individual.
And I think we talked about your cats being fed yesterday, and you can get that issue taken care of if necessary?
As long as it's not,
I don't think it will be. Is there any reason you can't be fair and impartial in this case? Thank you. Juror number 21. I think I have these in order here. You checked on number 16, which asked whether you had any difficulty reading English or understanding spoken English. You said yes to the spoken English. You misunderstood that also? Okay. You've understood what's going on?
Juror number 21, just speak up. I think you're the one I've been getting after a couple of speaking up. It's hard when you're not used to it, but please, if you don't mind.
I wanted to clarify that. You indicated that you thought law enforcement officers were selective in who they stopped. And I think we talked about, was that in relation to the DUI that you discussed with Mr. Teeger?
Yeah, I think they are selective, but at the same time, they operate a good job too.
Okay. Can you set aside those feelings and decide this case based solely upon what happens in this courtroom?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you don't have so much animosity toward law enforcement officers that they can't do anything right, is that?
Absolutely. And if that came across like that, I don't see where it would come across. I have Caucasian friends, so I know the difference with them. But I do know there's good and bad and everything.
Well, and I would assure you it didn't come across that way, but I have to, I want to dig a little bit.
Fair enough.
Okay. You indicated, I think on question 103, that you would have difficulty, well, again, 103 would, never mind. 103 was one of those questions. You answered it yes, and when I finally read it in detail, I figured it's a yes or no answer. Either one's right. So, but basically, you won't be influenced by any outside influences. Is that a fair statement on my part?
That's definitely a fair statement.
And you can follow the judge's rule not to talk about or watch it or anything else, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, everybody's going to be told that you're not to discuss this case among yourselves if you're ultimately asked to sit on this jury until it's finally submitted to you to deliberate. That means when we go out and take a lunch break or whatever, you can talk about anything but the case. Is everybody willing to follow that admonition that the judge will give you? Okay. Juror number 21, based on your, and again from your questionnaire, I get the impression that you've had some negative experiences with law enforcement personnel. And I just want to make absolutely sure before we go any further that you can forget about that and not hold it against Ray Tenzing if we ask you to sit on this jury.
I had a break-in in my vehicle, and I called the police because I needed help. So the answer is no, it's not an issue.
It's not going to be an issue. Okay, you can be fair and impartial and unbiased toward anybody in this case. Thank you. Juror number 23. You indicated, I believe, I don't know, did we talk to you yesterday perhaps? Did Mr. Teeger talk to you yesterday? Yeah. You indicated you didn't have any knowledge of this case other than the headlines, right? And was there anything about that that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial? I think you indicated that you know Shannon Hine, correct? And Shannon was the lead detective in the investigation of this case. Okay, you've never discussed this incident with Shannon? To grade school? Do you maintain contact with her? You don't talk about her business? Thank you. Is there anything in your background that would cause you to think you couldn't be fair and impartial to both the state of Ohio and to the defendant in this case? Thank you. Juror number 25. You've been sitting there very quietly all day. I've watched you a little bit. Are you okay with the process so far? You're not worn out or ready to leave? No. Okay. You indicated that your husband is a barber. I'm sorry?
My significant other.
Your significant other? Does he own the shop?
Yes.
Okay. I know in barber shops there's a lot of conversation about events of the day or news of the area.
Yes.
Does your significant other ever bring home that talk?
He hardly ever still works.
He what?
He owns the shop. He owns the shop, but he doesn't work there.
Okay. That's nice. You indicated that you did see the video, the body-worn camera video, but you did not form any opinions after having seen that, correct? Okay, and since we've been here since May 25th off and on, you haven't formed any opinions about this case? Thank you. I think you indicated at one point in the questionnaire here that you had expressed opinions about guilt or innocence in various discussions, or you had heard them discussed.
I've heard discussions, but I haven't.
And you've not formed an opinion, correct? You'll wait until this is all over if we ask you to sit on this panel. Thank you. You said in response to one of Mr. Teeger's questions that you felt that the video experts would help you decipher the video, correct? Would you agree with my earlier question or statement that the video experts are going to testify to help you try to decipher the video?
Yes, I think that's what they're doing a great job. It's again, the video short, group that we
Okay, and I think when Judge Giz finally submits this case to the jury, she's going to tell you that when you hear a witness testify, you can believe all of what they say, part of what they say, or none of what they say. And that would apply to the experts also.
Yes.
And do you understand that at the end of the day, it will be up to you to look at that video and figure out what your mind tells you and your eyes tell you that it shows?
Yes.
And it may be different from what one or the other or both of the experts have to say.
Yes.
Okay. And is there any reason you know of that you could not be fair and impartial? Thank you. Okay, juror number 59. Just want to make sure I'm going the right way here. You indicated in response to the question about, well, first of all, you said you watched the press conference of Joe Dieters, and you watched the video, and you did not form any opinions based on that, correct?
I heard his opinion, and when I saw the video, I was really confused by it. I haven't
Do you feel that way as you sit here now? Thank you. You indicated that you followed the first trial.
A little bit, yeah. I heard some of the headlines and, you know, what was going on and hearing the outcome of it. I wasn't following super.
Well, I think in one of the questions you indicated you knew what the reported jury split was on that first trial, correct?
Yes.
Do you understand that those reports may or may not have been correct? And are you willing to disregard any of that? Thank you. And you've never formed an opinion up to this point about whether Ray Tenzing's guilty or not guilty, correct? And I think you indicated that until today you didn't even know Uncle Mark was in the prosecutor's office.
Right, yeah, I knew he was aware. I didn't know.
And there's nothing about your relationship with him that would cause you to favor one side or the other in this case, correct? Thank you. Thank you. Juror number 62. Somehow, I didn't bring your questionnaire, but I have my little notes, so you only got a little bit more than one page. You indicated that you watched the video previously, correct?
Correct.
And you have not formed any kind of opinion, correct?
Correct.
And you still feel that way today?
Correct.
You wrote NA by the question, number 60, which said, did you think it was the shooting was justified? What did you mean by NA?
Well, I didn't have enough information to make a determination whether justified or not. I did based on the details that I saw.
And again, do you still feel that way today?
Yes,
You have an open mind,
I do.
and you're willing to be fair and impartial if you make it up here?
I do.
Thank you. You said you've participated in discussions about this incident?
Yes, I spoke, stated that I have stuff with, a couple of friends. Each one had their own opinion.
And you understand that opinions are divided on this, what happened here?
Yeah, that was their opinions on what they thought was.
And do you understand that people who have expressed opinions, unless they sat on the prior jury, have absolutely no idea of what all the evidence is that went into trying to make a determination on this case?
I agree with you, not at all.
Okay, and you're willing to wait and listen until you get all the information before you decide the case?
I will.
Thank you. In response to one of Mr. Teeger's questions this morning, you said you had not really had any discussions. Was that just a phrase you used about the case after the first trial?
Correct. Like I said, friends spoke about their opinions on the case, and that was pretty much it.
There weren't any great detailed discussions that caused you to form an opinion. Is that a fair statement? Thank you. Juror number 68. Again, you indicated on your questionnaire that you'd not watched the press conference in this case that Joe Dieters had when he announced the indictment, You had not watched the body-worn camera video, and you had not watched any online analysis that are out there. Is that correct? And for that reason, you can't have an opinion as to whether or not Ray Tenzing's guilty or not guilty?
I don't have an opinion.
Good. And you don't have an opinion as to whether it was the shooting was justified? And you're willing to come into this with your kind of blank mind, even after what you've heard so far, and be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on the jury?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes. Juror number 70. Pardon. Again, from your questionnaire, it looks like you have pretty much of a blank mind also as far as knowledge about this case. Okay. You did watch the first trial and you discussed it, but you did not form an opinion about guilt or innocence. Is that correct? You did. Okay. And that hasn't affected your neutrality at this point. Thank you. And as we have gone through this process and as we get ready to go into the trial, you don't have an opinion one way or another. Is that a fair statement? Okay. And there's nothing going on in your life at this point that would prevent you from sitting on this jury if we ask you to? Thank you. Juror 72. We're getting there here. Did you work for Ohio Heart when you were at Christ Hospital? How long have you been retired?
Since
2010? Okay. I asked my daughter-in-law works there, but she hadn't been there that long. So. You've watched the video but did not form an opinion, correct?
I saw pieces of it. I didn't sit down and watch it guessing for the order I saw.
Okay. When you say you watched pieces of it, the critical part of it is about 2.5 seconds long. So you didn't see that.
I did not see that part.
Okay. You don't have any opinions up to this point as to whether Ray Tenzing is guilty or not guilty of the 2 offenses he's charged with, correct? Thank you. You indicated that you were concerned about the reaction people would have depending on the verdict if there was a verdict reached in this case. Is that correct?
A little nervous, yes.
Are you so nervous that you couldn't sit here if we asked you to be on this jury?
No.
Thank you. Thank you. Juror number 73. We had a lot of discussion about your membership with Black Lives Matter, correct? Okay. And you've told us that won't affect your ability to be fair and impartial.
I think I have a strong opinion. Hopefully I can set it aside and be a set of facts rather than decide on a specific legal question that is sort of outside of that opinion. But I do have it.
Well, let me cut right to the chase here. You have a Facebook page, right?
I sure do.
And on that Facebook page, you've got a little picture that says, "Convict Ray Tenzing, Justice for Sam DuBose." Do you remember that?
I imagine it's from 2015, and if you say I do, I probably
Judge, I'm going to ask you to be excused for cause without going further.
Mr. Teeger?
Judge, just like with juror number 35, to revisit number 35, Judge, I know things can be put on other people's Facebook page. It doesn't necessarily mean that they posted it. If it's on their page or they adopt it or somehow initiate it. And I think the question is, can she be fair? And it looks like Mr. Matthews went on all the jurors' Facebook pages, so
It's perfectly okay for him. I mean, he can do that. He's got the jury questionnaires. I mean, he has a right to investigate these jurors. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, Judge, she said she could be fair. It's irrelevant as to what was on her Facebook page 2 years ago, and if he wants to question her about whether that would affect her impartiality, I don't have a problem with it, but I think that in and of itself would be inappropriate to excuse her for cause.
Juror number 73, you are excused for cause. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it. It's been a long few days. Go ahead, Mr. Matthews, when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Juror number 77. You indicated in response to the question of whether or not the shooting of Sam DuBose was justified that you were not sure whether it was or not, correct? Do you still have that opinion? Thank you. I mean, that's what we want. People who haven't made up their minds don't have any opinions one way or another until they hear the evidence. You're willing to do that? And are you willing to sit here if we ask you to sit on this jury and be fair and impartial to both sides? Thank you. And again, I think Mr. Teeger asked you some questions about experts, and you indicated that one or the other would have to make some compelling argument or something to that effect. Well, would you agree with me that no matter what the experts say, that at the end of the day it's going to be your decision on what the subject they testify about, what actually happened? You make your own mind up?
Yes, I agree that they present their side of it or their take on whatever it is we're examining, and we synthesize that information to jurors and come to their own conclusions.
Okay, and you're willing to not let them tell you what your conclusion ought to be, correct? Thank you. Juror number 78. You indicated, juror number 78, that you see both sides. He shouldn't have driven off, but I'm not sure a gun should have been out. I don't know. That's almost a perfect answer in the sense that you don't know at this point, correct?
Right.
You haven't made up your mind one way or another. You understand there are situations where maybe a gun should have been out?
Yeah, there are reasons for perhaps to
Okay, and are you waiting, or are you willing to wait until you've heard all the evidence in this case before you decide whether Ray Tenzing was justified in pulling his gun out?
Sure, there's a reason.
Thank you. Is there anything in your background or anything that you've experienced so far going through this process that makes you think that you do not want to sit on this jury, or that you could not be fair and impartial if you ultimately make it into the jury box? Thank you. Juror number 81. wrote a lot about you on here. You had an interesting response to one of Mr. Teeter's questions about experts, about how they shade their opinions based on what side they're testifying for. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement? Okay, and are you willing to listen to and consider what the experts have to say if they testify in this case?
Yes, sir, I'm very analytical. I take it.
And do you understand that just because they say something is correct, you don't necessarily have to believe that? And you understand that their testimony will be designed to assist you in reaching your own personal conclusion? You indicated on your questionnaire that you had watched the video and watched the press conference.
I watched the video once. I know it was on Facebook because I was not in the city at the time, so I really just kind of considered it. I don't believe I might have indicated that I saw a press conference, but I do not recall it now.
Okay, you also indicated that you had watched some online analysis that were up on the...
What was my agreement? I don't recall that now.
Well, there's a question on there. Did you watch any of the online analyses that were up?
Was it just a yes or no answer?
Yes.
Okay, then I might have missed.
Okay. Well, you indicated in response to each one of those yes answers that you had formed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing. And have you formed an opinion about his guilt or innocence?
I mean, like I said, I analyzed what I thought the video would take if I was to ensure that how I would do that kind of not that would shatter my student.
You also indicated on question 16 that you had difficulty reading English and difficulty understanding spoken English. That's not correct? Okay, was that a mistake?
Probably was.
Okay.
What did the question say?
Well, question 16 says, do you have any difficulty reading English? Yes, sometimes no. And you checked yes. And the other part says understanding spoken English. Yes, sometimes no. You checked yes. Okay, you can understand and speak. I mean, and understand what's going on here, correct? Okay. You indicated that you think law enforcement officers are selective in the stops they make, that there are a few stereotypes that seem to get caught more often.
Correct, and I believe that it's also due to what, like I said earlier, the media is shaped that way. They want to find a story, and it seems like everyone, they all get information from the media, and it's all shaped for that. So everything that I just stumble upon seems that way, but it also, in the real life, it probably not shaped that way. Just the media that portrays that.
Okay. Back to the press conference and the video and the online analyses, you indicated in response to the question of whether or not the shooting of Sam DuBose was justified, you said, I would have been a tough situation for anyone. I don't think he needed to shoot to kill or shoot at all unless a gun was present. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, there was no gun present.
Correct.
So does that mean that you...
But before the situation, we went into the car, the officer might not know.
Okay.
But to discharge a firearm, knowing that it wasn't present yet, I say it was.
Okay, well, and that's my next question then is, if Ray Tenzing never saw a gun or never discovered a gun that Sam DuBose displayed, does that automatically make you conclude he was guilty?
Not necessarily, because, like I said, going up to it, you never know what situation it could have been. He could have been caught off looking and something happened. So he had the right to, as an officer, have a firearm. Did he need to discharge it? That's up to the evidence.
You'll listen to the evidence? Okay. Question 61. Ask, will any feelings you have after having seen the video influence your ability to be a fair and impartial juror and base your verdict solely on what you see and hear in court? And you answered yes to that.
I was probably on the wrong side of mine. I'd probably say I was.
You're changing your answer now to no?
Correct.
Okay. In question 64, ask a series of questions about the first trial. And you indicated that you watched the first trial, or at least you were aware of it, correct? And you said that you knew what the jury split was in that case? Okay, it says, are you familiar with any media reports regarding the vote of the jury on each count in the previous trial? And you checked yes on that one. Was that a mistake? Okay. You said you discussed the first trial and that you formed an opinion, and you cannot set that opinion aside. Do you remember giving those answers?
I do, because the people I spoke with, they were pretty strong about it, but like I said, my point of opinion that I really followed, like I said, I wasn't chosen, I was just that part.
Okay, you did indicate that you could come into this case with an open mind if you're asked to sit. Is that your position today? You can be fair and impartial to everybody? Again, on question 95, you indicated that you have an opinion before the trial begins about the guilt or innocence of Ray Tenzing. You checked yes on that question. It asked, do you have an opinion? You checked yes.
Yes, I thought I already expressed that. That I had an opinion that I saw on the video. I said earlier that I thought both sides were in the wrong.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
This questionnaire, and this is for everybody here, it's a long questionnaire, but believe it or not, I mean, there are a lot of questions in here that don't pertain to anything or seem pretty ridiculous, but every one of them sheds some light on what kind of people you all are. And they're all designed to try to help us find people who won't have opinions and who will try to be fair and impartial. And this series of questions here about do you have an opinion coming into the trial is about the third place in this questionnaire where you can indicate whether or not you have an opinion. Every one of the places in that questionnaire, you've indicated you have an opinion and that it's going to be difficult to set it aside. You're telling us today, right now as we sit here, that you will set it aside and you'll come into this with an open mind. Because that's all we want, is somebody with an open mind.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, juror number 81.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So Friday we asked, there's a series of 4 questions. Please raise your hand if you felt like the media was concerned.
Yes.
Why is the camera still in here if we declare that we do not want our questionnaires to be, or even if it was redacted, why it's still being televised, even though we've already talked about
Okay.
like our employer, like who's our employer, and that's already being streamed, and then we said, no, I don't even want it fully redacted.
I'm going to defer to Judge Giz to answer that.
No problem, and that's a valid question, juror number 81, and for all of you. While we were in here on Friday, I was sued a number of times, literally filed, handed lawsuits during our breaks by the media, all the media outlets. They're represented by 2 different attorneys in total, and each one files their own lawsuit regarding any order I put forward. So the order that was put forward the night before we began, last Friday, on Friday afternoon, agreed that I would allow a camera to be brought in here, but it has to be, you'll notice that it's only filming right here You have not been filmed in any way, shape, or form. Nobody in here has. We have someone stand in front of it. It's off at all times until we begin, and someone is always standing in front of it when you're moving. And that's on purpose because it is the view of this court that jurors' identity should be protected, as well as your names, your questionnaires, all of that. But I have to be very honest with you, my compromise with the media was allowing that camera in here. But it didn't work because the lawsuits kept coming. So I got another one yesterday. I mean, quite frankly, I think they're going to give me a plaque in the courthouse for being the most sued judge so far. But I say that in jest. But the point is, that's why the camera is here. But I assure you, nobody's identity other than if someone, and I didn't want the camera in here to begin with at all because of your exact question. I think it's very important that you're saying that and it's being streamed out because I didn't want the cameras in here for that exact reason, for fear of people not answering, frankly. It has been, the attorneys have been very careful not to relay where you work if they can help it. Occasionally it's brought up, but it's been very cursory, I think, and we've done our best to protect your identity, but I can only do so much pending these lawsuits being determined by the appellate court. I'm sorry to go into this and waste our time with something like this, but that's a very good question, and I'm glad to know that someone has paid attention to that, but I assure you to the extent that I can, your identity is being protected by this court for as long as I can until I am told otherwise by an appellate court, the appellate court for us. Does everyone understand that? Okay. And I apologize, I maybe should have spoken up to begin with. And I didn't. I'm sorry when I brought the camera in. Are you still comfortable being here?
Fine. I just know the audio when they talk.
Right. I know, and everybody knows my voice. They know it's me, obviously. But if I were sitting there, I had the same exact argument, which was that people know my voice, and they're going to know me, my neighbors, my friends, people I work with, if they heard me. But it was a losing argument. So that's where we are at this point. Okay, I'm so sorry, Mr.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Juror number 81, based on that, are you still willing to,
That is a concern to me, yes.
are you,
The audio has been talking about the occupation of where I am.
I don't think anybody's talked about your occupation
I
yet.
was asked earlier.
Mr.
Oh,
T.
okay.
Judge, I don't think I asked where you.
Not exactly. Nobody knows where. No one knows where.
Are you okay sitting here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are you certain juror number 81? Because we can look at excusing you for cause if you have an issue. The worst thing that could possibly happen is you could get seated on the jury and then make that decision. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's kind of a can of worms. That's kind of a can of worms.
I know, I'm sorry. But it's...
Okay. Juror number 84. You're back there. You indicated that at the time of the incident, you saw the video, correct? But you said it's been so long ago that you don't remember it? And you are, at this point, you don't have an opinion as to whether Ray Tenzing is guilty or not guilty? What would you do if Judge Giz said, you're on this jury, go back there and deliberate right now? And do you know what kind of verdict you would return? Well, then it would have to be not guilty, correct? Would you agree with that? Because there has been absolutely no evidence presented to you to make a decision on. Is that a fair statement on my part? Do you agree with that? Okay. You indicated that you don't know anything about what happened in the first trial?
The first trial,
Yes.
no, didn't I start in November or something like that?
Late October, early November, yes.
Right, yeah. Once I get back to work, I'm not into that.
You don't pay any attention to the news?
Right, unless I'm not really a news person, unless someone tells me or something like that.
Okay. One question on here concerned me a little bit, your response. You were asked if you could decide this case if you're sitting on here without being influenced by outside influences, such as your family or friends or neighbors. You remember that question? And you said you could not render a verdict without being influenced by outsiders.
Say that one more time.
You indicated you could not render a verdict in this case if we ask you to sit on it without being influenced by outside influences. Let me just read you the question as it is.
I got it now.
Okay. So are you telling us today that you won't be influenced by outsiders? If
Right.
you'll decide this case based solely upon what happens in this courtroom, correct? Okay, good deal. One of your answers to Mr. Teeger amused me a little bit. You said that with reference to your custody case that the court system worked too fast, if I heard you correctly. Well, what you're seeing here is just exactly the opposite of that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I wasn't prepared to take care of it yet.
okay. And I say that facetiously, but we're actually, believe it or not, we're making some pretty good headway here today. And eventually we'll get the actual evidence and presenting the case. Up to this point, are you still willing to be with us? Thank you. Juror number 87. You indicated in response to one of Mr. Teeger's questions, I think you were talking about the drug dealing going on your street or in your neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
That you call the cops and the cops don't do anything.
That's correct.
Does that cause you to form a negative opinion toward law enforcement?
Towards Springfield Township, yes.
Okay, well, Ray Tenzing was a University of Cincinnati police officer, but police officers are all certified by the exact same organization in Ohio called OPATA, and they all get the same exact training to get certified. So in a sense, he isn't any different than the Springfield Township police officers.
Well, then maybe it's why it's not toward police officers. It seems like they don't have time for my neighborhood or just my street.
Okay.
As they should.
I guess what I'm getting at is, despite your negative experience or negative feelings about that, are you willing to set those aside and decide this case solely upon what happens in this courtroom if we ask you to sit?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, I think Mr. Teeger touched on it with you for a second, but on question 132, you were asked about whether you thought that there was ever any time when one human being could take another human being's life. Remember that question?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated there is no circumstance where one is justified to take another life. Only God has that right. Remember that answer? And we talked about it a little bit. Again, I want to make sure on this, but you understand Ray Tenzing, and there's no dispute about this, took the life of Sam DuBose. And that's what this case is all about. The decision's going to have to be made whether or not he was justified in doing that. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Is there ever any situation where you would say that he might be justified in having done that?
No, because I'm not in his position.
Well, again, my question was, is there ever any time when you think he might be justified in taking the life?
Only if he's been shot.
Only if he's being shot at?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I will tell you again, he was not being shot at here. There's not going to be any evidence that there was any gun possessed by Sam DuBose or that Sam DuBose shot at. Is that the only situation where you feel he could justifiably discharge his weapon?
Well, I think that question, or at least I took it as, it's just two people, and if one feels the need to take someone else's life, and they have a gun, then I don't think that the case.
Okay, I'm not following you, and I need to be absolutely dead certain on what your feelings are here with reference to this issue. Ray Tenzing's defense is that he was justified in discharging his weapon, and which resulted in the death of Sam DuBose because of things that happened during this traffic stop and because of things that will come out as the evidence is introduced in this case. But there's not going to be a bit of evidence in this case that Sam DuBose had a gun at any time. So do you have an opinion whether there are circumstances where Ray Tenzing could have been justified in taking Sam DuBose's life?
I don't know if there was any. I mean, you would have to bring that to my attention, and I'd have to look at that evidence from it.
Okay.
But from what I know and my feelings towards gun violence and that,
What was the tail part of that?
just in gun violence in general, no, I don't. Just in general, with gun violence, I don't think that it shouldn't come down to someone using a gun against someone else.
Okay, I still am confused. Are you saying under no circumstances could Ray Tenzing be justified in taking Sam DuBose's life?
No, what I'm saying is I haven't seen any evidence to point to that. So I haven't seen anything.
Exactly. But I guess what I'm getting at is if there is eventually some evidence produced, could you be convinced that this was a justified shooting? Or is there just, no matter what the evidence is, he wasn't justified?
No, there's a good possibility that it was justified.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear. Thank you, sir. You're sure about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there any reason that you cannot be fair and impartial both to the state of Ohio and to Ray Tenzing?
I can be fair to it.
Thank you. Juror number 88. You indicated in response to question number 60 about whether or not the shooting was justified that you didn't have enough information or didn't know enough to judge whether it was or not, correct? You still feel that way? Is there anything you've heard so far, either from Mr. Teeger's questioning or from me, that causes you to think you could not be fair and impartial in this case? Okay, is there anything that causes you to feel either anything we've said or anything that's occurred since you've been involved in this that makes you feel you don't want to be here? You're willing to serve if asked? Thank you. Thank you, juror number 88. Juror number 90. I think we're at the end here. Juror number 90, I note that at one time in your life you were a receptionist in a law office. You're not now, correct? Was there anything about that experience that causes you to have any feelings one way or another about the court system? You're unbiased anyway, correct? And can you be fair and impartial if we ask you to sit on this jury?
Yes.
You indicated that you had watched or at least followed the first trial but hadn't formed any opinions about guilt or innocence?
I would say that I did not follow the case, and no, I did not have an opinion.
Okay, and you did not apparently have never seen the video?
No.
And did not watch Joe Dieter's press conference where he announced the indictment in this case?
That's correct.
So you pretty much have a blank slate coming in here. Based on anything that you've heard or learned about the case up to this point, has it caused you to form an opinion? Thank you. Judge, that's it.
Okay. Counsel? Yeah, no, I don't think judges need to. I will in a minute, that's calling. Okay.
Watch your feet.
Come on, guys, we got 25 minutes, we can get more done. I need you up here.
I got it, Judge.
unfair position here.
selected, okay? So if that is the case, I want to make sure everybody here, because every one of you is a potential juror at this point, when you come back tomorrow, just make sure, you may not, like I'm wearing heels, you don't want to be walking around if you get out of the bus and walk around with high heels on or uncomfortable shoes or whatever. I mean, I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like, but I guess it's going to be fair. The other thing I'm going to tell you is, again, I can only protect your identity to a certain degree. So if we're having a site visit, media will be there. They have been instructed under order of this court not to take your photo, not to take your picture on video. The only thing I can do if they do that is hold them in contempt, which I will do, but I cannot stop the general public if they are recognize that this is going on and want to take a picture, take a video or something like that. So it is up to you. You have your choice. I think the parties would prefer that you get out of the bus and look at the site, but that is up to you when you get there tomorrow. We can talk more about that tomorrow. You're welcome to bring a baseball cap or sunglasses or whatever. That's not going to offend me in the least bit, so I don't think it'll offend the parties either if you feel that that will make you more comfortable. Again, I have no idea who's going to be on the jury as of right now, and we can get a good feel for it, but we don't really know. So it could be any one of you. So I want to give that to everybody. Also, the same admonitions apply. No discussion of this evening. No looking on social media. No going on television or email or whatever else you do. The Snapchat and the social stuff. The websites and you know, the funny thing is, just as a sidebar, I used to do that prior to becoming a judge, and then I was completely off of it because it gets a little, and I'm so glad. It was the greatest thing I ever did, was getting off that stuff. But at any rate, we're waiting on Brad to come up. Brad is going to tell, here he is. Okay. Where would you like him to meet in the morning? We're very close, but we still have to have everybody back tomorrow.
Everybody's coming back?
Yes, everybody's coming back.
I think it's best to do the same thing we did today, to report to room 468, and then when we get, just come right up here.
Okay, again, we're going to start tomorrow morning. One second. We're going to start tomorrow morning at 9:30 here, so please be in the courthouse by 9 o'clock. Bring your placards. Take those off right now, please, and bring those with you tomorrow because we're still going by numbers. And someone had a question over there. Yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by a full day?
Full like today, 9:30 to 3 this time. Huh? No, that'll start after we actually have opening statements and do all that. That'll be probably the next day. It'll be after the site visit. So I'm not, that's what I mean.
I would say Thursday then.
Yeah, Thursday. What day are we on? Yeah, tomorrow's Wednesday, Thursday, for sure. Okay. Huh? I did a gig. Thanks.
Okay. I want to get my big belly.